You used to feel things. You used to get excited about ideas. You used to believe in people. You used to wake up with something burning inside you, a hunger, a curiosity, a sense that the world was vast and waiting for you to discover it. And now you catch yourself rolling your eyes at optimism. Now you hear yourself saying, I've seen this before you've even finished listening. Now the world feels smaller, heavier, grayer, and you tell yourself this is just maturity, this is just wisdom, this is just what happens when you finally grow up and see things as they really are. But what if I told you that everything you've been told about growing up is backwards? What if that grayness isn't wisdom at all? What if it's a possession? What if something ancient has moved into your psyche, something that wears the mask of experience but feeds on your life force? Nobody warned you about this, but Carl Jung did. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why your cynicism was never your fault and exactly what to do about it. Stay with me. He spent decades in the darkest corridors of the human psyche, sitting with people others had given up on, mapping territories of the soul that most psychologists wouldn't even acknowledge existed. He broke with Freud not because he wanted to be right, but because he had seen something Freud couldn't see, something deeper, something that rewrote everything we thought we knew about what it means to be human. What Jung uncovered about the Senex, the archetype of the old man, the elder, the wise one, was so devastating in its simplicity that it should have changed how every single one of us approaches aging, maturity, and meaning. But it didn't, because the Senex doesn't want to be seen. The Senex wants you to believe that your bitterness is just wisdom, that your rigidity is just discipline, that your grayness is just reality. And today, you're going to learn what took Jung 40 years to articulate in the next 35 minutes. But let me ask you something. When was the last time you truly felt alive, not productive, not successful, not secure, alive? When was the last time you felt that spark, that moist, burning, urgent thing that made you want to create, to explore, to become? If you can't remember, then the Senex has already begun its work on you. And that is exactly why you need to hear this. Jung wrote, the term Senex is not meant to denote merely an old man, but rather an archetypal image of meaning and wisdom, a personification of the masculine spirit. In other words, the Senex is not just about getting old. The Senex is an ancient pattern buried deep in your psyche, a force that can awaken at any age and any person when the conditions are right. And when it awakens in its healthy form, it brings exactly what we need: perspective, patience, the ability to see patterns across time, the wisdom to know what truly matters. The healthy Senex is the grandfather who knows when to speak and when to listen, the mentor who sees your potential before you do, the part of you that finally stops chasing every shiny distraction and commits to what matters. But here's what Jung saw that nobody else was willing to see. The Senex has a shadow, and that shadow is devastating. James Hillman, one of the greatest Jungian scholars who ever lived, wrote something that should be tattooed on the forehead of every adult human being. The negative Senex is the Senex split from its own pure aspect. He has lost his child. The archetypal core of the complex, now split, loses its inherent tension, its ambivalence, and is just dead in the midst of its brightness, which is its own eclipse. Read that again. Dead in the midst of its brightness. That is what cynicism is. That is what bitterness is. That is what that gray heaviness you feel actually is. It's not wisdom, it's not maturity, it's a split, a severing. The Senex has cut itself off from the pure, the eternal child, the spark, the moist seed of spirit within you, and without that spark, wisdom becomes tyranny, experience becomes prison, and you become dead in the midst of your brightness. And here's the part that should terrify you. This can happen at 25. It can happen at 35. It can happen at 55. The Senex doesn't care about your biological age. The Senex cares about one thing: whether you've lost your child. Have you? Drop 777 in the comments if you've ever felt that spark inside you dimming, and tell me, when did you first notice the grayness creeping in? Was it a job, a relationship, a betrayal, a loss? I read every single one of these. Jung understood something that our modern culture has completely forgotten. Wisdom and bitterness are not opposites. They are the same archetype, split in two. The healthy Cynic says, I have seen much, I have learned much, let me share what I know to help you grow. The negative Senex says, I have seen much, I have learned much, and it has taught me that nothing changes, nothing matters, and anyone who believes otherwise is a fool. Sound familiar? That voice that tells you that your dreams were naive. That voice that whispers that people don't really change. That voice that makes you correct others before they've even finished speaking. That makes you dismiss new ideas before you've considered them. That makes you feel superior in your suffering because at least you're not deluded like everyone else. That is not wisdom. That is the negative Senex, and it is eating you alive. Hillman again, with devastating precision. Without the enthusiasm and eros of the sun, authority loses its idealism. It aspires to nothing but its own perpetuation, leading but to tyranny and cynicism, for meaning cannot be sustained by structure and order alone. Let me translate that into the language of your life. When did you stop aspiring? When did your goals shift from, I want to create something beautiful, to, I just want to survive this? When did your standards shift from, what would make me feel alive, to, what won't make things worse? That shift, that subtle, almost invisible shift, is the Senex taking the throne, and once it's seated, it doesn't want to leave. The negative Senex has a very specific diet. It feeds on time, not time as in aging, time as in the crusted accretions of profane history. Hillman called it exactly that. Time, called euphemistically experience, but more often just the crusted accretions of profane history, becomes a moral virtue. In other words, the negative Senex convinces you that simply having existed longer makes you right, that your scars are credentials, that your disappointments are degrees, that the fact you've been hurt means you understand the world, while those who haven't been hurt yet are simply naive. But here's the question that should haunt you. If your wisdom only makes you more bitter, more rigid, more alone, is it really wisdom? Or is it just scar tissue, hardening around a wound you never healed? Drop 111 if you've noticed this pattern in your own life. What's the one belief you hold that you tell yourself is just realistic, but that might actually be the Cynic speaking? What's the dream you gave up on because you grew up? Jung sat with people others had given up on, people who had been through war, through loss, through the kind of suffering that breaks most human beings, and he noticed something that should change how we think about trauma forever. The people who healed, truly healed, not just survived, were not the ones who got over it. They were not the ones who moved on. They were the ones who found a way to keep the child alive inside them, even in the darkest places. There was a patient who came to him, a man who had lost everything in the First World War. His family, his home, his sense of purpose. He had every reason to become the negative Senex, every reason to harden, to close off, to declare that the world was cruel and that hope was for fools. But this man didn't. Instead, he started painting. Badly at first, childishly. He painted trees and rivers and faces that looked nothing like the people he had lost. And Jung watched him, week after week, as this man, this broken, middle-aged man, rediscovered something that the war had tried to kill in him. Not happiness, not optimism, something deeper, the pure, the spark, the moist seed of spirit that Hillman described, the call of a person to his or her daimon to be true to itself. And Jung understood in that consulting room that the Senex and the pure are not enemies. They are not even opposites. They are two halves of the same archetype, two faces of the same coin. And when they are split, when the Senex banishes the pure, or when the pure refuses to acknowledge the Senex, both become pathological. The pure without the Senex becomes the eternal child, irresponsible, escapist, forever chasing novelty, never committing, never grounding, never becoming. The man who is 40 and still waiting for his ship to come in. The woman who is 50 and still believes that the one will appear and solve everything. The person who mistakes freedom for avoidance and calls it authenticity. But the Senex without the pure, that is what we're talking about today. That is what you feel. That is the grayness, the heaviness, the cynicism that wears the mask of wisdom but is actually just death in the midst of brightness. And here's the breaking point, the moment of crisis, the confrontation that Jung knew was inevitable for anyone who wanted to become whole. You have to look your Senex in the eye and ask, what are you protecting me from? Because the Senex, even the negative Senex, believes it is protecting you. It believes that by hardening you, by making you cynical, by killing your hope, it is saving you from more pain. It is building a fortress around your heart. And it will tell you with absolute sincerity that this fortress is necessary, that the world is dangerous, that hope is reckless, that softness is weakness. But what if the fortress has become the prison? What if the very walls that were meant to protect you are now the walls that keep you from living? Leave 11 in the comments if you're ready to stop running. What's the one truth about yourself you've been avoiding? What's the softness, the hope, the dream that your Senex has declared unrealistic? Say it out loud. Write it down. Let it breathe. Jung wrote, "The purpose of adulthood is to return to childhood as a matured being, not to stay in the state of childhood and refuse to grow up." Let that sink in. Return to childhood, not as a child but as a matured being. This is the integration. This is the alchemical marriage of Senex and pure, the wise old man who still laughs like a boy, the elder who still wonders like a child, the person who has seen the darkness of the world and chosen to carry light anyway, not because they're naive, but because they know that cynicism is just another form of cowardice. Yes, I said it, cynicism is cowardice. It takes no courage to be cynical. Anyone can look at the world and declare it broken. Anyone can roll their eyes at hope. Anyone can sit in their fortress and judge those who are still fighting. What takes courage, what takes the courage of a matured being returning to childhood is to look at all the evidence for cynicism, all the reasons to harden, all the betrayals and disappointments and losses, and still choose to be soft, still choose to hope, still choose to create, still choose to love. That is not naivety. That is the highest form of wisdom. That is the integrated Senex, the wise old man who has earned his gray hair not through bitterness, but through the courage to keep his heart open in a world that rewards closure. And here's how you begin. First, you have to name it. You have to look at the parts of yourself that have become rigid, cynical, bitter, and you have to stop calling them wisdom. You have to call them what they are, scar tissue, defense mechanisms, the negative Senex trying to protect you by killing you slowly. Second, you have to find your pure, not the irresponsible, escapist pure, the divine child, the spark, the part of you that still gets excited about things, the part of you that still believes in beauty, the part of you that still wants to create something that outlives you. Where is that part of you? What did you love before the world told you it was impractical? What made you feel alive before you learned to be realistic? What did you create before you learned to be efficient? That is your pure, and it is still there. It has been waiting. It has been patient. It has been hopping against all evidence, against all your cynicism, against all your fortress walls that you would remember it. Third, you have to let them meet. The Senex and the pure, the elder and the child, the wisdom and the wonder. You have to let them sit together in the same room of your psyche and recognize that they need each other. The Senex without the pure is a tyrant. The pure without the Senex is a ghost. But together they are what Jung called the self, the totality, the wholeness that transcends consciousness. And that right there is the goal. not to kill your cynicism, not to reject your wisdom, but to hold both, to be the person who has seen the darkness and still carries the light, to be the elder who has earned the right to play, to be the child who has learned the discipline to create. Drop 33 if this is hitting home. What's the biggest fear holding you back from your own truth? Is it the fear of being hurt again? The fear of looking foolish? The fear that if you let yourself hope, you'll just be disappointed? Name it. Name it and it loses half its power. Jung understood that archetypes are not just concepts. They are forces. They are living patterns that move through us, that possess us, that can either destroy us or transform us, depending on whether we are conscious of them or not. The Senex is no exception. When you are unconscious of the Senex, it possesses you. It makes you rigid before you realize you've stopped bending. It makes you cynical before you realize you've stopped hopping. It makes you bitter before you realize you've stopped tasting. But when you become conscious of the Senex, when you see it, name it, understand it, something miraculous happens. The possession breaks. The archetype no longer controls you. You begin to work with it, to dance with it, to integrate it. And this is where your life changes. Because the integrated Senex, the wise old man who has reunited with his divine child, is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. This is the person who has the patience of the elder and the enthusiasm of the youth, the perspective of experience and the openness of wonder, the discipline to commit and the courage to begin again. This is the mentor who doesn't just teach, who inspires, the leader who doesn't just command, who transforms, the parent who doesn't just protect, who empowers, the artist who doesn't just create, who discovers. And here's what you need to understand. This integration is not a one-time event. It is a practice, a daily practice, a lifelong practice, because the forces that want to split you, that want to make you either a rigid old tyrant or a flighty eternal child, those forces never stop working. Life will keep trying to harden you. Disappointment will keep trying to make you cynical. Loss will keep trying to make you close. And every time you will have to make the choice. Do I let the negative Senex take the throne? Or do I call back my pure? Do I build another wall? Or do I keep my heart open? That choice, that daily, hourly, moment-by-moment choice, is the work of individuation. That is the path Jung laid out. That is the journey to wholeness. And it is the most important work you will ever do. Drop 528 if you're committing to this path. What will you do differently starting today? What's one small thing, one tiny act of rebellion against your cynicism that you will do in the next 24 hours? Say it, claim it, make it real. And this is the moment everything changes. You have seen the Senex. You have named it. You have understood that your bitterness is not wisdom, your rigidity is not discipline, your cynicism is not realism. You have understood that the spark you thought was gone is still there, waiting, patient, eternal. Now you need a method, a practice, something ancient and forgotten but simple enough to start today. I call it the Saturn return ritual. Saturn is the planet of the Senex. In medieval astrology, Saturn was known as the maleficent god, the dwelling place of the devil himself. But in alchemy, Saturn is also the prima materia, the starting material for the great work. The lead that becomes gold, the limitation that becomes wisdom, the death that becomes rebirth. The Saturn return ritual is a 5-step practice designed to reintegrate your Senex and pure, to turn your lead into gold, to transform your bitterness back into wisdom. A real space, a room, a corner, a chair by a window, light a single candle, not for ambience, for focus. The flame is your pure. The holder is your Senex. Together they are the integrated self. Sit in silence for 5 minutes, not meditating, not visualizing, just sitting, letting your thoughts come and go, letting the Senex speak if it wants to, letting the pure whisper if it dares. Speak aloud, yes, aloud with your actual voice, the ways the negative Senex has possessed you. Be specific, be honest, be brutal. I have become cynical about. I have become rigid about. I have become bitter about. I have killed my hope in. Don't judge yourself. Don't try to fix it yet. Just confess. The Senex thrives in secrecy. Nomming it aloud is the first act of rebellion. And yes, this will feel uncomfortable. The Senex will resist. It will tell you this is silly. It will tell you that talking to yourself is a sign of weakness. Let it talk. Then keep speaking anyway. Now, and this is the part that will feel most strange, most vulnerable, most necessary, invite your pure back. Speak to the child within you, not as a parent, not as a critic, as a friend, as an equal, as the part of you that has been waiting. I know I've been hard on you. I know I've told you to grow up, to be realistic, to stop dreaming. I was trying to protect you, but I see now that I was also protecting myself from the pain of hopping. And I'm sorry. I want you back. I need you back. Show me what you still love. Show me what still makes you feel alive. And then this is crucial, listen. Don't plan, don't analyze, just listen. What does the child say? What does it want? What does it love? What does it fear? What does it need from you? Write it down, every word, every image, every feeling. This is the raw material of your transformation. Now you have two lists, the confession of the Senex and the invitation to the pure. And here is where the alchemy happens. For every item on the Senex list, every cynicism, every rigidity, every bitterness, find the corresponding pure quality that can transform it. Senex, I am cynical about love because I've been betrayed. Pure, I still believe in connection because I feel alive when I'm truly seen. Senex, I am rigid about my schedule because I fear chaos. Pure, I feel free when I allow spontaneity, even in small ways. Senex, I am bitter about my career because I settled for safety. Pure, I still dream of creating something meaningful, something that outlives me. This is not positive thinking. This is not toxic optimism. This is the integration of opposites. This is the alchemical marriage. This is Jung's vision of wholeness, made practical, made daily, made yours. Choose one small act, one tiny daily act, that honors both your Senex and your pure. Maybe it's, I will wake up 30 minutes earlier, Senex discipline, to write poetry, pure creativity. Maybe it's, I will save 10% of my income, Senex responsibility, to fund a trip I've always dreamed of, pure adventure. Maybe it's, I will have one honest conversation per week, Senex courage, about something that still makes me feel vulnerable, pure openness. One act, one daily act, that is your commitment, that is your ritual, that is how you turn lead into gold. You are not broken, you are becoming. You came here feeling something you couldn't name, a grayness, a heaviness, a sense that the world had shrunk, that your spark had dimmed, that wisdom had become a prison. And now you know its name, the Senex, the old man, the archetype that can save you or destroy you, depending on whether you let it split from its child. You know that your cynicism is not wisdom, it's a severing. You know that your rigidity is not discipline, it's a defense. You know that your bitterness is not realism, it's a possession. And you know that the spark is still there, the pure, the divine child, the moist seed of spirit that Hillman described, the call of a person to his or her daimon to be true to itself. It has been waiting, it has been patient, it has been hopping against all your fortress walls, against all your cynicism, against all your realism, that you would remember it. And now you have. So what will you do with this remembering? Will you let it fade? Will you let the Senex whisper that this was just a moment of weakness, just a fleeting feeling, just another naive hope that the world will crush? Or will you commit? Will you practice? Will you do the daily work of integration, the Saturn return ritual, the confession, the invitation, the alchemy, the commitment? That choice is yours. It has always been yours, and it will always be yours. Jung once wrote, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek, But what he taught us, what he spent his life teaching us, is that you don't slay the dragon. You don't kill the Senex. You befriend it. You integrate it. You let the old man and the child sit together by the fire, and in that friendship, in that wholeness, you finally become who you were always meant to be. If you could speak to the part of yourself you've been hiding, the pure, the spark, the dream, the hope, what would you say? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one, and I want to hear your voice. Subscribe to Jung Unveiled and walk this path with us. The work of becoming whole is too important to do alone.